You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
And if there's one thing that consumers do every day, they eat. And a big part of that is food safety. Is your food safe? Whether it's cooked foods or whether it's raw foods, fruits, and vegetables. Not every convenience retailer has the ability to tap into food safety experts. Don't worry, NACS does, and we're going to spend some time today talking to one of them. Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Chris Blasinsky with NACS.
And today, Chris and I are joined by phone with Shelley Feist, Executive Director of the Partnership for Food Safety Education. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be on the podcast.
So, Shelley, NACS joined the partnership last year as a member, and it's been one of the more beneficial partnerships that we've had the last few years. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what the partnership does?
Sure, and it's great to have NACS on board, given the significant role that food is playing for your members and for the consumers who are customers. Partnership for Food Safety Education is a nonprofit, and we work across the lines of government, industry, consumer groups, scientific organizations to ensure consistency of messaging for consumers about what's within their control, actions they can take to reduce the risk of foodborne illness for themselves and the people they care about. We do this through partnering with educators across the country and through a website at FightBack, that's FIGHTBAC.org, where consumers can get directly information about food safety, recipes, and all kinds of tools that help them learn about how they can take action at home to prevent food poisoning.
So, Shelley, part of, within our industry, we are about a little over 153,000 stores in the U.S., and among that universe, there's about 165 million customer transactions per day within the convenience store channel. That's a lot of customers coming in and out, not only for fuel, but also buying food. And some of it is, packaged, some of it is prepared on site. And we also know that within an hour, most of that food is being consumed as customers are leaving the stores. So, real quickly, what are some of the basic, food tips that we can communicate with consumers as they're eating on the go?
Well, some of what I'm about to say, people might think, well, that's common sense. But the truth is, we know from research that even though people might be aware of some of these basic things they should do to reduce their risk of illness, they don't consistently do them. So let's start with just, washing hands. Being conscientious about hand washing can really make a difference between being well or being sick. It can make a difference between, transferring an illness to a loved one, including a child or somebody who is more susceptible to serious illness. So hand washing, keeping cold foods cold, hot foods hot. To your point, consuming or refrigerating your foods within a 2-hour period and even 1 hour if it's a hot day outside. And then, of course, cooking food safely or reheating, as the case might be with some of the products people take away from your stores, reheating foods to a safe temperature and avoiding cross-contamination, being careful with raw meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and how they might come in contact with foods you're going to eat raw, like produce, including fresh-cut produce.
So one of the things, the website is Fight Back, and it's not Fight Back as in attack. It's not BACK. You're like the convenience store industry. It's on the surface, it seems misspelled. But BAC relates to bacteria and all the elements related to that. Can you tell us a little bit about what the website is designed for in terms of general usage and communicating issues or things you need to know about food safety?
Sure. Well, as a nonprofit, we are serving a large audience on a small budget. And one of the things I think our website does really well, and we hear this from people who come to the website, is we help you find a download or something you can print or something you can share with others about these core four messages of clean, separate, cook, chill. And another thing we really started to do is add the kind of content that people really enjoy at home, including recipe videos. Our recipe videos are a little different than a lot of others because we put safe handling prompts right in them. So those are some of the kinds of things. And another interesting point might be that a teacher can come to our site. So we work to serve teachers, consumers, and public health educators so that are organized under clean, separate, cook, chill, or by certain high-risk behaviors or foods, they can find information that's simple and actionable. That's our goal anyway.
I was thinking about, we're talking about, consumers on the go and, eating mostly within the hour, but there's also the customers who, we have convenience stores, say, located near, a lake or a big picnic area and things like that, where they're coming into stores and, kind of packing up for the day. And maybe they're getting the sandwiches prepared there that have some, ingredients on them that could spoil, like mayonnaise after a long period of time in the heat. Thinking about those stores in those areas, how important is it for customers to know when they walk out, like how to safely, store that food until they're ready to eat it?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that just the very simple concept that keeping foods chilled does a lot to inhibit the growth of the bacteria that can make you sick. Now, the kind of bacteria that can make your food smell funky if it's been too long in the fridge aren't the bacteria that can make you sick. The kind that can make you sick, you can't smell them, you can't see them, you can't taste them. So, to your point, a great practice, if you're going to go to the lake, go to the park, stop at a convenience store, get some food, is to keep a cooler with ice or gel packs and just work to keep that cold chain. That's what they call it in the industry, which is, that these perishable foods are kept chilled. And, the food industry works to preserve that cold chain. So at the point that you buy it as consumer, it's a great thing to protect yourself and your family by keeping those foods chilled.
And related to that, so if it's at the lake, if it's at a multi-hour excursion, there's an opportunity for convenience stores to maybe say, we have coolers, we have ice, because convenience stores sell somewhere around 45% of the bagged ice in the country. And it also extends to perhaps if there's a natural disaster, let's just say that you might not have power in an area because of a storm or an impending storm. Convenience stores have an opportunity to at least tell a story to customers in the area. We have ice, we have coolers, come visit us if you need to have your food kept chilled so you can keep it a little longer. And I think that's one of the important things that NACS has learned in working with the Partnership for Food Safety Education, that there are alternative ways for us to tell stories instead of just, as retailers, just thinking about being there for customers, but proactively telling a story about food safety.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that's important. And I know from past research we did that related to retailers, food retailers, that customers appreciate that. Instead of thinking, why would you tell me to protect my food? Is something wrong with my food? They understand that, you're giving them tips that, help them enjoy quality and healthy food, and everybody's working to be healthy. So preventing preventable illness like foodborne illness is a great way that retailers and convenience stores can communicate with customers.
And of course, hurricanes are a big part of that. That's something where you may just be see the signs, see the warnings, and you got to leave town. Or if you're sheltering in place, do you buy ice in advance, and how might you prepare? So there's some great tips online for how you can prepare in advance so that it isn't a food safety crisis in addition to any other sort of crisis that might be occurring with a natural disaster.
Yeah. But, these big storms and things, they definitely stress you as far as, care and keeping of food. So, there's also the great advantage that there's so many ways you can buy products now, and I'm sure your members offer some of those shelf-stable things. So, yeah, the government and partnership, we really hope we can support consumers when they're preparing for electrical outage or, a form of emergency.
Shelley, earlier this year when you guys hosted your conference, you introduced the Safe Recipe Guide, which I thought was excellent once I got through it and went home and actually flipped through some of my older cookbooks and realized that I didn't see a lot of information in there about, I just chopped up some meat, so therefore perhaps wash my hands would be a great idea. And cross-contamination between, a poultry and a vegetable product. I was just curious, what have you seen, so far how well that Safe Recipe Guide has taken off, especially, the type of feedback that maybe you've gotten through, cookbook authors, that type of community, and just, hopefully thanking the work that the partnership did for really bringing simplified, great information to consumers that, doesn't go totally in depth to the point where you're confusing anyone, but at least gives them, really tangible clues as to stop what you're doing, wash your hands, use a different cutting board, that type of thing.
Well, I'm so glad thank you for talking about the Safe Recipe Guide. So it was built on a very powerful research that was funded by the USDA through a major university, multiple studies. It was about handling of poultry eggs. In it, they observed consumers and tested whether having these prompts in a recipe, prompts to wash your hands, for example, whether that led to the consumers actually washing their hands at those points. And not surprisingly, maybe it did overwhelmingly. So we set out to go, okay, what's the next stage of this? And the next stage would be really going to recipe writers, cookbook writers, and saying, if you build these really short, and of course we worked hard to shorten these prompts, build this information into a recipe, you could see 88%, 89% compliance on some of these simple practices. So we've talked to some editors, and they are very impressed by the research behind it. And we are getting good reception on it. And it's a long-term project. But we'll be, hopefully someday consumers are going to, every recipe they access online or in a cookbook, in a magazine, hopefully every recipe will include specific food safety, simple prompts. That's our goal.
It also makes me think, too, when cooking at home, a good tip for consumers is, maybe you can shed some light on this. Do you think consumers know the difference between cleaning versus sanitizing? I know I had to think about it when you guys had a webinar on it recently, and I had to think about it and realize that perhaps maybe I didn't even know.
Yeah, and I think it's complicated by the fact that there's so many home cleaning products that make various claims about, how they control bacteria, et cetera. Yeah, great advice for consumers is cleaning is a stage where you use soap and water, say, to wipe down your counter. Sanitizing is a stage where you might use a sanitizing spray that includes bleach or a diluted water and bleach solution. And you don't need to constantly sanitize, but you do need to constantly clean and occasionally sanitize at home. And we'll be working to do more to get that message out about surfaces and things like your refrigerator, and especially in households where you have high-risk individuals. And I think it's worth noting for your listeners, like high-risk is we know this very well from data on who gets sick. Young children are overwhelmingly much more vulnerable to serious illness, and in the elderly, immune compromised people. So, a healthy adult could be like, I'm not afraid of food poisoning. That's not going to happen, or I can get over that if I do get it. But if you've got a toddler at home, you really need to think differently about, this kid's immune profile is nothing like mine, and it's my job to reduce risk for the children.
And I know it's probably frustrating. Well, it is frustrating for you and other food safety experts when you watch a live segment on a cooking show, whether it's a morning news show or something like that, evening news show. And in a matter of 3 minutes, they take something that has the potential for a lot of foodborne illness, throw a bunch of things here and there, and they pull something out of the oven. Are there any things that when you see these TV shows, whether they're live or taped, that just make you cringe, that you want people to go, don't do that? That's not the way it works, even though I know you're trying to save time.
Well, yes, and actually, Jeff, some of that plays itself out in the research with consumers that's been observed. When a television cook, as you say, it's 3 minutes from raw chicken to beautiful roasted chicken and vegetables. And they, by the way, when they put the raw chicken in the pan, they didn't go to the sink and wash their hands. They just, they moved to chop up the vegetables. Unfortunately, even some research recently observing consumers found that they didn't necessarily wash their hands even after they handled raw meat and poultry. So it's really a matter of being aware, and I think things like recipe prompts, if you're in the act of cooking. I would say, too, that people should look at food shows are great, and they're entertainment, and they're not meant to be a step-by-step, thorough, execution of a safe meal,
So we want to end with going through a couple myths and see if you can either support that they're accurate or debunk them and have a little bit of fun if there's such a thing in having fun with the subject of food safety. But there is. Yeah, okay, good. Because we thought we'd play around. You had just mentioned chicken. So we'll start with the first one. The myth is you should always wash poultry before you cook it.
Or is that a fact?
Oh, that's a really good one. People get excited about this one. Rinsing chicken is not a safety step. It has nothing to do with safety. So we don't recommend it. So that would be a myth.
And it's because anything that might be a contaminant is cooked off, and anything you can transfer just by washing, you can transfer the bacteria to a lot wider area than otherwise just cooking it.
Yes, rinsing it might just spread bacteria around, and the safety step on raw poultry is to cook it to a safe internal temperature of 165.
So speaking of a safe temperature, myth or fact, I can determine whether my meat or poultry or whatever is cooked to temperature by touching it.
Or looking at it.
Touch it, look at it. No, that is a myth. You cannot tell food is cooked to a safe internal temperature by looking at it, cutting into it, or pressing on parts of your hand and then pressing on the steak. No. That's something, by the way, I know celebrity chefs do. You need to use a thermometer. And especially if you have vulnerable people in your household, you should use a thermometer and check your safe temperature chart from fightback.org. And that's how you'll know it's done. It's both safe and it's quality. By the way, people overcook chicken all the time. They overcook pork all the time. You can enjoy safe and tasty, pork, chicken, steak by using a thermometer and following the temperature guideline.
So have another, is it a myth or is it a fact? Eggs are the reason that you should not eat raw cookie dough.
Well, Jeff, it's a fact that eggs are a reason you should not eat raw cookie dough. But cookie dough could also have flour, raw flour. This is flour that's just milled from raw grain, and that also could be a risk. So flour and eggs can be a food safety risk. And you shouldn't eat raw cookie dough with your children. I sound kind of scolding. I'm going to steal it back here. We've had parents be like, it's so fun, though, when they make cookies. It's so fun. We eat the raw dough and blah, blah, blah. Again, if you're a parent, you probably wouldn't get sick. Your kid could get salmonella and get very sick. So eating raw cookie dough, wait till they're cooked, and know that there may be more than one raw ingredient in the cookies that could cause illness.
So basically what you suggest is don't eat the raw cookie dough while the cookies are cooking. Have somebody go to the convenience store, get some cookie dough ice cream, and enjoy that.
Yeah, or they could go to the convenience store and get a good coffee drink. You guys offer a lot of options for safe snacks and beverages.
So one of the things, we've been a part of the partnership for food safety education.
Yeah, we're on our second year now.
And when we go to these partner meetings, it's amazing the groups that we meet and learn more and more. And it's just been a wonderful partnership to work with you and work with the other partners in sharing ideas about food safety education. You mentioned the website a couple times, but you may as well give it one more plug as we exit here so people can go and check it out.
Oh, good. Thanks, Jeff. So the website is fightback.org, and that's spelled FIGHTBAC.org because we're fighting bacteria. And I'd love folks to look out for our recipe videos and our Story Age Your Dinner content because they'll find a lot of cool stuff and recipes.
Well, thank you, Shelley, for the work that you do. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.